So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forward. And today I'm delighted that we have with us Heather White, who's the CEO at Smarter Networking. And so Heather, firstly, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And secondly, if you'd like to introduce yourself and Smarter Networking and how you work with people and how you help them, that would be great.
Okay, Chris, thanks very much indeed. I mean, it's an absolute delight being here too. So thanks ever so much. So my expertise is in 4 areas. So I teach people how to create the right networking strategies for career and business development. That dovetails really nicely with sort of personal brand. LinkedIn optimization. So those who are seeking career opportunities, then I help them to maximize their LinkedIn. So I don't write them. But I do help people to make sure that they maximize those. And for the last 5 years, I've been helping people find board opportunities. I used to do placements. So now I'm going to continue with the coaching on how to find your first non-exec or trustee role. So that's what I do.
Oh, fascinating. So I suppose networking as a principle has changed massively. I mean, we're probably talking, certainly with COVID and etc. That must have been. I'm going to ask you about some challenges later on, but that must be a really interesting process to have gone through.
Yeah, I mean, the lockdown was really interesting. Do you know, it's really odd. I mean, I've been working with universities, for example, business schools for decades now.
Yeah.
And with all my foreign students, they were sort of probably in the minority in some ways. And they were always sort of saying, but how do I stay in touch with people when they're all in different countries and everything?
Yeah.
So you would then rely on, you know, the mediums to actually do that. What was interesting was then to sort of see that turn on its head, where everybody had to find a mechanism in which to stay in touch with people. So in some ways, there was no difference, and in other ways there was massive difference. You know, and that, I mean, that comes down to some degree the psychology of this. So say, for example, if you're more of an introvert, then this network and stuff online, having teas and coffees online, you know, let's get the cup of coffee out and let's have a chat and everything, became quite difficult because the spotlight was on you.
Yep.
But for those who are more, I don't know, gregarious, really comfortable with the camera, this was a perfectly fine thing to do. So it did mess things up, but it was the same stuff.
Yeah. Yes. It just a different platform, I guess, isn't it? And different principles. I mean, it's interesting because I remember previously we did quite a lot of work in America, and you know that they've been used to teleconferences, video conferences forever because you know the country's so big you can't have physical meetings on a regular basis, and it didn't seem to affect their ability to do business. It's just maybe adapting a bit to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's going to continue the way that we have to adapt to how we're going to develop future relationships, because that's not going to stop.
No.
And I find all of this fascinating in itself.
Yeah. And it just is really, I do too. And it's really interesting how, you know, when we realize it, you know, this meeting, obviously we're quite a distance apart. And we can have this meeting very effectively, efficiently. So it's a very efficient mechanism. And but still a lot of people are resistant to the idea that, you know, this would be the new norm.
Well, you see, I think the challenge for everybody is, if you know somebody, then this is easy to do, even if you've only met them once. Yes. This is not difficult. I think the challenge for a lot of people, especially when they're building their businesses or whatever, so if you've never met someone before, then the platforms, you know, this virtual stuff forces you to be perhaps a bit more formal. So what I had to learn myself was how to still chat to people as though you were out for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Now, I always sort of distinguish between, if I'm having a networking chat, coffee, if I'm going into someone's offices to do a formal client meeting, and I would actually treat my Zoom calls in exactly the same way. Yeah. So, for example, if I'm doing my networking bit, I always start the call off with my tea in my hand, as though you've just gone into Starbucks.
Nice.
I'm setting the scene. But if I'm, you know, going in for more of a formal meeting, then I sort of tend to start off quite quickly with a pen in my hand. just to sort of indicate where we're at. Now, that doesn't take away that even on a formal basis, that we don't have a chat. I need to suss out, who are you? You know, I mean, this doesn't change no matter what medium we use, whether or not we're face-to-face or virtual. What doesn't change is that I've got seconds, minutes in which to suss out you and your character. You know, do you want to get to know me, or do you want to do business? Do you know what I mean? And so on that basis, this hasn't changed. It's just there are variations, but it hasn't changed.
No, really fascinating. I mean, that's a whole topic in itself. Could you talk a little bit about your background? You know, how you got into business and why this particular one? Although I can see how much you love it, so that's probably a no-brainer.
Well, no, actually, I mean, funny enough, I never ever intended to go self-employed in a million years. I was a very good, loyal employee. Now, I say that if I'm not satisfied in the job, I used to just get up and leave. So I've had over 30 jobs, which is not something I should probably admit to. But, you know, I was a restless soul. And funny enough, I've been self-employed or running my own business for 20 plus years. And I love it. And we'll come on to all the challenges and stuff. But pre that, it never entered my head. But when my last job, and I'll be again frank, is that I got back from holiday, my boss says you're sacked, you know, you're fired, sort of thing. And this is all before The Apprentice. And I just remember thinking, I was in my early 40s, and I thought, you know, bugger this. I've had enough of all of this rubbish. I'll start my own business. I'll show you. No role models, no idea, no business plan, no nothing, no contacts, no location. I mean, because I lost my home, you know, I lost my car, everything. I was in debt, blah blah. And but I just thought, I don't know where it came from. I just had this, right, I'll show you. And my first business failed. I was doing because my last job was outside. I was employee benefits. I was in insurance and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Employee benefits, and I started off. I had this brilliant idea, which, funny enough, I was so before the wave. I mean, honestly, it really, you know, when you look back and you go, should have stuck with that. So employee benefits in those days really was pen and paper sort of stuff. And then I had this idea going multiple benefits, you know, a suite of benefits, and there must be a way of technically doing this, but I just didn't have a clue. I raised 10,000 quid, which was amazing, lost 10,000 quid very quickly, because I was paying myself a salary, because that's what I was used to.
Yes.
Anyway, so, but I was way ahead of the curve on that one, way ahead. However, one of the main reasons why it didn't work was because I didn't have a clue about networking, who to talk to, what to say, didn't know how to sell myself. And networking was one of my major factors of getting it wrong. I mean, apart from cash flow.
Yes. Not sure. Well, so that's so when I mean, when you were growing up, what did you foresee yourself saying? What was the plans there?
Well, there wasn't, you see. I mean, I do remember when I was younger saying to my mum and dad, when I grow up, I'm going to become a manager. And they were going, a manager of what? And I went, I don't know. I'm just going to be a manager, because my parents were very, very, very compliant. You know, be respectful to your elders. You know, nothing wrong with that. But we lived in a very small world, tiny little world, so to speak. So therefore I didn't have ambitions per se, other than I didn't want to be like my parents, but I didn't know what that looked like. So a manager was it.
It's interesting.
And I did. I mean, I became a manager at 21 and so messed it up. Honestly, Chris, you'd laugh your head off, because I became a manager at 21. Didn't have a clue what the heck I was doing. Really annoyed my staff. I mean, I didn't have many. Really annoyed them. And they went out on strike. Well, two of them went out on strike. Fantastic. Because I was such a mean, horrible person. And that was only based on what I had experienced. And I thought, well, that's what you got to be. You know, you learn, people teach you things really quickly.
Yes. Well, that's quite that's as they say, feedback is the breakfast of champions. That's a pretty strong bit of feedback there, isn't it? Right. A good claim to fame as well, I'd say. Having people, yeah. So other than that, and obviously we mentioned COVID, what are some of the biggest issues and challenges you have had to overcome over your career?
Do you know, I was thinking about that question, and I think it has to be mindset. That probably for me was the biggest one. It's, you know, what right do I have? I suppose in the early days, it's I was so driven by, I'm not going to go back into employment. It's not going to happen to me. I'm going to stay out of the corporate world. In itself, that was naive, but nevertheless, that's where my mindset was. Yes. And I had no vision, none whatsoever. It was just a case, how do I earn my next penny? You know, how do I pay my bills? That's all it was. And then when I realized that networking was a thing, and I thought, right, okay, well, how do I go and find out about this thing? Couldn't find anybody, couldn't have afforded it anyway. Was joining all of these different networking groups. And as I'm wandering around, I'm going, do you know, they're just as bad as I am. You know, and, you know, circumstance, serendipity, you know, I love all of that stuff. And eventually I volunteered to go and sit on the Hammersmith and Fulham Chamber of Commerce. They were being merged with London Chamber of Commerce. The guy that sat on the committee there said to me, oh, you do well over at the Chambers. And all I said was, does it pay money? And he went, yeah, we'll pay you, you know, part-time. I went, I'll take it. I didn't care what I was doing. I'd take it. And then you see in membership, you know, my job is to go and recruit people and everything. And I would ask them the same question, going, so, you know, they'd all go, my reason for joining is because I want to network. And I go, well, you know, what does that look like for you? And they're all over the place. And I thought, you know, there's an opportunity, because I don't know what I'm doing. They don't know what they're doing. I can't find a coach. There must be something, there was something there. And it's that lovely, you know, when you set up a business, that little light bulb moment, and you go, ding, I got it. And my first client was the Metropolitan Police.
Oh, well.
I know. And the reason why that came about is because I joined another committee, CIPD, Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. I joined that committee because I was joining anything just to try and learn and find people and stuff. And one of the clients there, one of the members there, turns around and says to me, you know, what do you do, sort of thing. And then, you know, they sort of says, come down to the Met then. So I walk into the Met, you know, I'm like going, I've never, you know, it's like, what on earth would the Met want to talk to me for? Anyway, so we had this amazing chat. I talked about this networking stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, I mean, I'm sort of probably about 2-3 months into my business.
Yeah.
And they're going, so what do you do? And I'm sitting in front of the Met going, I'm bullshitting like mad.
Yep.
And I get a contract. And I'm going to teach borough commanders how to involve their stakeholders, break down silos. So it wasn't, you know, I mean, the Met, you could have your own views on how you interpret that, but they really wanted to break down silo mentality and all of this sort of stuff. And I remember turning up on the day. I mean, there were 20 odd borough commanders, you know, big blokes, you know, egos and, you know, legs of pride. And my mouth, I was so scared. My mouth was dry. You know, when the tongue sticks to the roof. And this bloke's going, you know, come on then. What are you going to teach us then, darling?
Brilliant.
That was it. Me fired up. Right. Okay. Let's talk about it. It's great.
That must have been quite intimidating. I mean, clearly intimidating. Well done.
But I worked with them for about 11 years.
Wow.
You know, they took me all over the place. I mean, I loved working with them. They were amazing.
Brilliant.
I won't hear a word said against them. As much as they mess things up, they are simply amazing.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And what would you say some of the biggest learnings you've had in business in general? And from that, I would imagine there must be many.
I think we come back to mindset again. You know, I think no matter which way I look at this, I mean, you must see this a huge amount.
Yes.
It is, it's all to do with what's going on up here. And so that to me is probably the biggest learning. But then you then look at, okay, so how do I educate myself? You know, how do I how do I remain curious and fresh?
Yeah.
Who am I within this? I mean, I felt for many years that I should be driving myself to scale my business up, because when you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, they all look at this scaling up sort of stuff, and I fought against myself for, I mean, I'm talking about decades ago, must scale, and brought in different business partners, tried different business models. Nothing really worked for me. But then I realized actually I'm sabotaging, because, you know, I actually didn't want to grow a business. I really love being a sole trader. You know, I mean, I did have during different times, I've had staff working with me. But I actually don't want to be. And so this mindset bit, fighting all the time with who I really am against what's possible.
Yeah.
So all of that to me was probably the biggest learning about myself. And that was fascinating, actually. I learn, or still learn, to observe myself.
Yeah.
You know, look at where the trigger points that are making me anxious, and then writing those down just so I can see what the monster really looks like. And then also, to some degree, accepting my personality.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that I put my own limits on or anything, and I know that I could have done better, but I don't know if that would suit me.
I think, I mean, in what we do is, you know, the first thing is, what does success look like? Because success is different to every individual. And it's like, you know, success isn't growth necessarily. It doesn't have to be. It's just what would make us ultimately happy and contented.
Yeah.
And you know, it's really being true to that. Because as you say, if we don't, then we will sabotage, because we actively don't want it. I think the only challenge is, in general, is people put limits on themselves based on what they believe to be reality. I.e., not that I don't want it, but I can't achieve it. And that's where sort of mindset work can really help. Is you know, that there isn't anything. I think you said that yourself earlier. But the favourite quote goes all the way back to Henry Ford, which is, you know, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And so that's fine. But personal choice is way more important. What do I really want? And when we nail that,
and not to feel guilty about it too. I mean, I've wasted so much energy on this guilt. I mean, when I started my business over 20 years ago, there were 3 or 4 other people that were starting off at the same time, and they have like soared. I mean, seriously soared, and I'm like going, oh my God. So part of me is going, well, I could do that. I should be doing that. And then I look at how stressed they were. I mean, they were very excited. They were highly driven. And obviously everyone's circumstances, as you say, is very different. And I kept looking at that going, do you know, I don't want that much stress. Oh, I should grow. No, I don't want that much stress. No, I should grow. And in the end, you know, so you want to chop your head off in the end, going, shut up. But one thing I do have is, and this does, I think this is really important. I really am disciplined. I mean, I've been self-employed for all this time, and I've never, ever shirked my responsibilities or not turned up for work. Never, in 20 odd years. Brilliant. And that discipline has served me incredibly well. So that's a bit where I'm going, rock on, kid. And that suits me. That discipline actually suits me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Discipline's a really interesting one, isn't it? I know James Rohn talks a lot about discipline, and the challenges he says is that every act of discipline brings a multiple reward, but in the future, the reward for lack of discipline is now potentially. I won't do that. I'll do this, but the rewards are in the future, and that's the challenge that many people face, is that if they're not naturally disciplined, it's building that muscle, isn't it? Working on a regular basis. I think you're aware we were a coaching organisation, and I'm keen to know who the best coach or coaches you've worked with, and why. But in any, whether that's business, sports, life in general, who are the key people that have influenced?
Well, I thought that was such a lovely question, actually, and I've written down a list.
Brilliant.
Yeah, because I would say accidentally I've been exceptionally lucky. I mean, really, really lucky. I've had so many people who have given me their time. When you look at networking for what it does, one of those things is that you meet extraordinary people, and ordinary people. I mean, ordinary, because to me, it's the same sort of stuff, you know. And sometimes they pass on wisdom. They don't even know they've passed on wisdom. Yeah. And then there's other times when you've got the formal side of it. So, you know, I've got Richard, Matt, Naomi, Ellie, Liz, Brian, Andy, Marion, and I mean, I could go on and on. And some of them are what I call one-off mentors, and some of them are these ongoing people that just keep showing up in my life, bless them.
Yep.
And they give me the time of day. So I have done a couple of formal coaching, mentoring sessions where I've really felt I need something quite sharp for this.
Yes.
But most of my mentors are those which I've just met, we've clicked. They've got something that I go, I need to understand that. And I could not have achieved what I have achieved being the sole trader and not had people around me. Now, did I listen to them all the time? No. No, I didn't. But when I've realized that there are times when I need to get, again, I like being the observer of myself. I realize there are times I'm going, I'm resisting. And the amount of times I've said to my mentors, I said, look, I'm resisting you at the moment. I said, can you ask me a question, which is, Heather, why are you resisting me? So they go, all right then. So they go, Heather, why are you resisting me? And out it all comes, you know, as to what's my point. But I know that when these mentors are doing such a good job, whether, like I say, formal or informal, I think anyone's got to go, when is it that you sit there and you're going, I ain't going to do that. Well, that's a load of bollocks, isn't it? Not doing that. And I had to, and again, that comes back to often the growth or not growth sort of side of it, you know, because I kept on asking that question so many times. I must have driven myself nuts, like anybody else. Anyway, so my mentors are critical to me. Brilliant. Absolutely vital to me.
Brilliant. And through, whether it's with the mentors or just personally, have you developed any, or is there any favourite quotes or sayings that you on a regular basis? Oh, good.
Here we go.
I collect them, so that's
all
good.
Right, I've got a few here actually. So, the quality of your question determines the quality of your results. Love that one. Don't die with your song unsung.
Ooh.
Reject Me, I Love It, which is the name of a book, Susan Jeffers, which is just amazing. The secret of the universe is in the timing. Now, that's a quote that comes from Terry Pratchett, who wrote The Discworld.
Yes.
I can't remember for the life of me which book it was, but it was almost like that was one of those light bulb moments when I burst out crying.
Wow.
Because I just thought, oh, that is so true, you know. And the other one that comes along with it, actually, but from a chap called Tony Robbins, called The Point of Frustration is the Point of Learning.
Yeah.
And those, whenever I get stuck, I just keep coming back to that, you know, and they all serve me brilliantly.
Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. I think the last one is very relevant to, I guess I always talk to people, I do a fair bit of sales training, and an objection is someone trying to work out how it will work, not telling you why it won't. That's their way of expressing, I don't get this can't work because, and if you get that, then it's just about understanding and then helping them understand how it might work if it does. But
sorry, Chris, but so when you're building a business, I mean, when I did a lot of work with Tony Robbins, so I went over to America and all sorts of things, and it was just incredible, actually. And when he sort of said, he shouts out to this room, so who's frustrated? So everyone sticks their hands up, and he's going, great. We're all going, really? He's going, that's the point of learning. And I remember this energy that came whooshing out into the audience and everything, and we're all sitting there going, duh. And I remember then a while later, I'm at my kitchen sink, you know, and it's 12 o'clock at night. I've got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go and deliver a program. And I'm binding this booklet. And I'm using this machine, you know, that machine that you crunch it down and then you've got to stick it all together and then you crunch it down again and everything. And I'm going, what am I doing? And his quote comes floating into my head, and I'm like going, the point of frustration is the point of learning. And I just looked at my kitchen top and I thought, okay, what's the lesson then, Plonker? Yeah. I went, outsource? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. And you know, sometimes we get into habitual things like, you know, when we're especially when you're penny pinching. I mean, in those days, I mean, I really was seriously tight on money. And I'm penny pinchings all over the place. And I thought, what would be better, Heather, to go and pay someone 50 quid or whatever it was in those days to go and get this job done? You pick up the box and you take it away. You wake up fresh. You don't wake up stressed. Then you go and deliver something, you know, being on your best performance rather than standing there going, I am so knackered.
Yep.
And so every time I hit, you know, that trigger point of something is stopping me, and I'm going, right, what am I frustrated about?
Right.
And then I can make decisions.
Great.
So that's how it works for me.
Wonderful. I love that one. I'll take that one with me. So speaking of learning, what have you say you learned about yourself as you develop your career?
Oh, everything. I mean, you know, there's not a bit of me. The original Heather White, when I left the corporate world, I don't think I'd even recognize her now.
Right.
You know, I know that's what got me to starting my own business, but who I've turned up. I mean, you know, when you come to, my first client was the Metropolitan Police, and I'm having to deal with these big burly blokes, you know, and then I'm sort of I'm working with the FTSE, I go internationally, you know, and every single time I have to prove myself to an audience, every single audience, no matter how good your reputation is. Yes. You know, they're going, okay, well, I've seen you on your TEDx and everything. Go on then, entertain me. Go on, tell me something I don't know. Yep. You know, and every time I do a coaching session, you know, that person sitting opposite me is going, you know, in their heads they're going, go on then, show me.
Yep.
And so I was not like that at all. I didn't, you know, I was confident, but not like I am today, you know, and I can't think of anything that really phrases me. I still get upset and worried and everything else, but nothing. I just go, there is a solution somewhere. And if I don't know, somebody else does know.
Yes.
So I have changed in every way. I've become who I should be. This is who I really am. There is nothing false or fake or anything else about me at all. This is absolutely who I am. And this is who I want to be.
Yeah. Brilliant. So looking forward, what's the future look like for you, and what challenges do you face, if any?
Well, I'm doing a career transition at the moment. I have worked since I was 12 years old, and been doing this business for 20 plus years, and I have worked seriously quite hard. So I am now splitting my time between Smarter Networking and still carrying on doing the coaching, training, speaking, etc. But I'm also splitting my time and I'm doing crafting. So I'm learning how to craft. Yes. And so there is a drive there still inside of me. And I'm now slowly learning how to set up a business on selling my crafts. And that I'm having to learn some new skills.
Yep.
But I'm leveraging all the stuff that I've already learned, and I'm just applying it to this one. But I'm going from services to products.
Yeah.
Now, this is about making life a little bit easier. So I don't want to be, you know, churning out thousands of this. What I want to be doing is doing something with my different brain.
Yeah.
You know, service delivery, as you know, is very different to product delivery.
Yes.
And so I'm enjoying that at the moment. And I've sort of set up where I am at the moment. This is my shed, my office. So this part is all the professional bit, and then all down here is all my crafting bit. So I slide my chair backwards and forwards.
Brilliant.
So that's what I'm doing.
Brilliant. Well, probably a good time to ask you the question of what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now?
Well, do you know, I'm coaching a young lad who's just starting up his business. It's a friend of mine. I've known him since he was quite young, and he's equally frustrated with the corporates. And so I can't, should you start a business? Do you know, yourself, there's so many variables in that. The answer is yes and no. What would I say to someone who was starting up a business? Research, and more. and then be brave.
Yeah.
You know, and all the pros and cons that people tell you is going to happen will happen. Believe them, it's going to happen to you.
And if you started again, is there anything you do differently?
No. And that's not because I'm being arrogant. It's just that that's where I was. And when I started this crafting business, I mean, I started another business about 5-6 years ago, and still made the same mistakes in that one. I was better at a lot of things, but they still smack you in the face going, oh, that didn't work, then did it? And the crafting sort of side of it, that's quite interesting. Just starting that at the moment. I'm taking all the learning from here and applying to this, but I know I'm going to still make mistakes on that side of it. So, you know, I think the most important thing is to enjoy the journey. That's the bit that is vital to me. Just going to go on it, enjoy it, you know, grab the experience with both hands and just enjoy it.
Yeah, brilliant, wonderful. That's very sound advice. And finally, going on advice, what advice would you give an 18-year-old you if you were able to go back in time and do so?
Just get on with it. Just, you know, you know, we've all made mistakes and stuff, but I don't know. I wouldn't change any of it. No, actually, I tell you what, there's only one thing I would change. I would have saved more for my pension. That's the only thing I would have done differently. But otherwise, no. You know, we come back to the quote. You know, the secret of the universe is in the timing. So it is and was as it is and was.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you like where you are, then if you change anything, you might not be there. So
no, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's sort of that sliding doors idea, isn't it? Any change would have done that. So even the challenging stuff, as you said, the point of frustration is the point of learning. Without those, we might have had the learning and might not be here. So it makes absolute sense. So, and it's been really fascinating, really entertaining and delightful. So thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wanted to contact you for anything we've talked about, what would be the best way to do so?
Look me up on LinkedIn is probably the easiest thing, Heather White. And if you just put in networking, I'll come up. I'm currently wearing a nice green jacket, and I'm into yellow at the moment. So this type of yellow band behind me. So yeah, Heather and yellow.
Wonderful. Well, Heather, once again, thank you so much for your time, and it would be great to swing by in 6-12 months and see how the new crafting business is going, I guess.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. I really enjoyed it. You're an absolute gem.
Thank you very much.